What's up guys, welcome back to Talaria Boys. This is my Talaria Sting R, and I know we keep saying our bikes are fully built, but they've been missing one thing. Here it is. Finally, an upgraded motor worth having. This is the Talaria Sotion motor. This thing has a ton of power. We're gonna get it thrown in there, see what it can do.
If you're interested in purchasing this Sotion motor, hit up Darwin EV. Again, we have that discount code down in the description. So it's time to go back 3 weeks and watch us install this. Me and Reed are gonna tag team swapping this motor out. We're gonna show you guys everything that comes in the box. We're gonna do a little bit of repinning on our connector here. We're gonna show you how to take this motor off, take the gearbox off of this motor, put the gearbox onto this motor, and then reinstall it back in the frame and show a little bit of setup on the EBMX X9000 to make sure that your motor is running properly. Now this motor is a very high power motor. You can tell, like, it's a beefy motor. I had my motor out a couple days ago and I was kind of feeling the difference between this one and that one. This is about 3 pounds heavier. Oh, and really quick, if you guys enjoy this video, hit that subscribe button. We have got more cool videos on the way. And huge shout out to Darwin EV for working with us on getting this Sotion motor and helping us get set up. If you guys are interested in purchasing one, we'll have a link down in the description. He gets them sent out super quick. Okay guys, we're gonna get this motor installed. We kind of have an order of operations here to make this as simple as a process as possible. First order of business is to unplug our battery and take it out. We don't want any power going through all these wires while we are disconnecting things. Next operation is going to be to remove our chain. We're going to pop that off. Sometimes you do have to loosen your rear axle and slide it forward just a little to get your chain off. So we will do that so that we can remove our actual gearbox here. Our goal in this video is going to be to pull out the motor and the gearbox all hooked on as one. That's been the easiest way for us in the past. We're going to pull it out all as one unit. To do that, we do need to remove our skid plate. This is an aftermarket skid plate, but to remove your stock one, it's just 2 bolts on each side. Super simple. We will either need to remove the controller partially, maybe just the bottom 2 bolts, but we just need to get the 3 motor phase wires unscrewed from the controller. So we'll look at our room in a second once we have everything partially taken off. And we're also going to remove this plastic panel. There is 4 screws, 2 3mm screws on top, 2 4mm Allen screws on the bottom.
Also took the cover off by the gear oil.
Yep, gear oil cover. We'll show this side. It's just got 2 little bolts, and we're going to pull this whole setup out of the way. Okay, Reed has his controller halfway taken off so that he can reach in here and remove the 3 phase wires that run from the motor to the controller. Those are a 5mm Allen. He'll peel those off. You can see he's already got 1 off right here. And then we're also going to reach into this wire boot right here, and we're going to unplug the encoder that runs from the motor. So you'll trace this wire back right here into this boot and unplug it. Okay, our next main step is literally to remove the motor and gearbox combo altogether. And then what you guys are going to do is kind of all at the same time. This does help if you have somebody to kind of help hold up the weight of your motor. This is a bolt you need to remove. That holds your motor on. This is a bolt you need to remove. You also have a big bolt right here that runs through the back of the gearbox and has a nut on the other end. So it's the one right above your suspension linkage. That's an 8mm on one side, 15mm socket on the other. When you come around to this side, this is the other motor bolt that you need to remove. And then the other one is right down here. So you have 4 motor bolts and 1 big bolt back here. One more thing we forgot to do, you need to unplug your DC converter right here, and that will stay on your motor, and we'll swap it to the other one in a sec. So the easiest way to do this is you can literally remove all 4 of the small motor bolts holding it on. If you leave this one big gearbox bolt, that will literally hold the weight. The motor is loose, you can see it wiggle. So now we're gonna have one of us hold it and have one of us pull that pin out, and we're gonna drop the motor down just like this. Here we go, there's our bolt. We're just gonna lower this baby right down out. There it is. So that's your motor, gearbox, DC converter combo right there. So we're gonna swap everything on here to the new motor. Okay guys, our next step is to remove everything off of this and stick it on the new motor. You guys can see they look pretty different because there's a lot of stuff on here. I recommend taking a picture of this so you can line everything up on the correct screw holes. Now Sotion says that this motor is direct plug and play. However, it is not. We've had a couple people install this recently since we've gotten ours the last couple days, and there's been a little bit of discrepancy on screw length and a few things relating to these 2 spacers that hold one side of the motor on. So we're gonna remove all these things and we're gonna move them to the new ones, but we're gonna add a little thin washer to between the top head of this screw and the metal right here on every single one, so that our screws don't bottom out in these holes before the gearbox is tightly mounted onto the motor. So that's our first step. As Reed's removing these, we just want to make it clear that you do not remove all the bolts on top of this piece of the gearbox. You just do these 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Also, these bolts are going to be very tight. Like, we're having to be very careful breaking them with the Allen wrench and then loosening them carefully to not bend them or break them, because they do have a significant amount of Loctite on them and they're just very snug in there. Next up, we need to remove the snap ring off of this with our snap ring pliers. Pull our front sprocket off.
Our snap-ling pliers.
Yep, our snap-ling pliers. Then we're gonna pull this baby off. We have all of our bolts off, and you can lift the gearbox out. Kind of just gently wiggle it. There it is. So now our motor's looking like our other motor, right? We've got.
Don't look at that.
Yeah, don't look at that. We didn't break that bolt off. Okay, our next order of business, once you get your gearbox removed, we need to set up this motor for the gearbox installation by putting on our gearbox motor mount. So they do not supply screws to mount this on, and the stock screws off of your stock gearbox mount are not long enough. So we again had to find our own screws. They are pretty long. We're actually using like the kind of the same style of bolts that hold like your brake caliper to your fork. And we are gonna line those up, thread those bad boys in. Again, we are talking to Sotion to get them to fix these things, to send you bolts that are gonna work with this, to potentially send you bolts that are gonna mount your gearbox without having to find new spacers. We're working on that kind of stuff. The other thing that you have to do is when you are mounting this back on, these 6 bolts are now slightly too long. They actually bottom out into the threads on the motor, so we are adding one little thin washer to all 6 of those screws, and then they work perfectly. So again, we're talking to them, try to get some sort of situation figured out on that. This is how those are gonna mount. You've got your bottom bracket here, and then you have your DC converter on the side, and we'll have our top bracket on these 2 bolts up here. Okay, now that we got all 6 of those bolts in, we've got this slid on here. We're gonna go ahead and just tighten up, snug up our gearbox bracket here, so that we can install our front sprocket on. Now we got to address our plug. So they do send the correct plug, it's just not wired in. So we've got a bunch of pins here. We're going to show you how to do that.
Also a pain.
Also a huge pain. Sotion, come on. So we're going to wire that in. What we did first is we actually took the stock plug that they send on the motor and you just cut all the wires off right here. They have pins inside, but we can't reuse those. They send new ones, so we cut it off, and we're just stripping back the heat shrink tubing on the wires just a little ways, and we're gonna put new pins on, and we're gonna wire it in. We'll flash a picture up on screen to make sure that you guys do it right, and then we'll be able to plug this baby in.
Okay, we got all these crimped on. Now, you gotta put these little rubber pieces on to get a good watertight seal. Then we're gonna stick them in the plug.
All right, Reed, explain to us correct order of operations for plugging those babies in.
So basically, we got this piece on top. You go red, top left, skip a spot, black, white, then bottom row, yellow, green, blue, brown.
Okay,
Now,
we're gonna have this picture up on screen.
Yep, and now these are not going to match every one of these wires. Some of these colors match these ones, but not all of them do. So just follow our guide and it will work. So to get these pins in, you just put it in as far as it'll go, then get a little screwdriver or something and push it in the rest of the way and you'll hear a click. And then it'll be in its spot. And then you push the red rubber piece in there after.
Yeah, so when he was installing it, he slid all the rubber pieces back, kind of towards the back of the wires here, and got the pin in nicely to click, and then push the red thing in like he was saying.
And this is a huge pain, so hopefully Sotion sends it with this plug soon.
Yeah. Come on, Sotion, you gotta be sending it with that plug so we can just plug it right in.
This is ready to get thrown in.
Yeah, look at that bad boy. She's heavy.
It's really heavy.
Okay, we're gonna do the exact opposite of how we took this motor out. We're literally gonna slide the back end with the gearbox up to this spot where we can slide that bolt back in, And then that will take all the pressure off so we can slowly hold it and line up the rest of the bolts. All right. So get that slid up there. Line up the back, grab your big bolt. Go back just a hair more. I think we're going. There we go. Boom. Okay, that's in. You can literally take your hands off, and then we'll lift it up here, and we'll get this side bolts on first, because then we got to talk about the spacers on the other side that we have to grind down. So we got our bolts on the other side of the motor in. Now we're left with these two spacers that go on these two bolts that go into these spots right here between the motor and the frame. Now these are about 1 millimeter too long now, so they're just a hair too long. We got to grind them down. Again, Sotion, come on, you got to get that fixed. How we doing? She fit? So once we grind down both of the metal spacers, one here and one here, the bolt is then too long. It bottoms out in the threads going into the motor, so you have to find a washer or a lock ring style thing that will go right here inside this hole to basically stop your bolt from going in too far. Our best bet was these lock washers because they don't have a super big ring around the bolt, so they actually fit inside this hole. We already have one in on this one, and they seem to be doing the trick. So it's about that thick. Lock washer slides on our bolt. Barely fits, and it doesn't stick out super far past the head, if that makes sense, so it'll fit in that hole. Our spacers have been ground down, bolts are going in. So now the heads of these bolts stick out a little further than they used to because we had to add that spacer, but our motor should be in. So now what we got to do is connect up our phase wires. So we'll hook these up to the back side of here, then we'll start putting stuff back together. It's pretty easy to get these motor wires connected up once you kind of move some of these other wires out of the way. And then we just got to get our encoder plugged in. The one that we repinned, plug that into this plug right here. All right, we got our motor phase wires connected up to the controller. We got everything nicely tucked in here. We got our encoder sensor routed up here and plugged into this wire boot. We also plugged in our DC converter, that silver thing that's hooked onto the gearbox. We plugged that back into the same wire boot. We got our controller bolted back on, and now we are going to get our chain put back on, get this plastic plate back here put on, and then we're going to put our skid plate back on, and we're going to be pretty much done besides getting it set up in the app for the controller. If you've made it this far in the video, it's time to just get our motor calibrated for the bike. To do this, you want to have your bike on a stand, all installed, and then X9000 app. You probably already know how to do this, but we'll just show you really quick. We're going to go ahead and just connect to our X9000, go in here, go over to our settings, and we're going to go to general. So you guys will already have your bike type selected as Talaria Sting. Now you're going to go in and select your motor type. Now the motor you are looking for is not actually in here yet. It might be by the time you get it. It will either be called Sotion FW02, which is the Talaria version of the Sotion motor, or it might be called Sotion Talaria motor. I don't know exactly, but if it is not here, email us at talariaboys@gmail.com. We'll send you the actual motor file and we can get it loaded in for you. Or you can go on the EBMX X9000 Facebook group, join that, ask the question. They will help you out as well. So in this case, you would select your motor type, and then you would make sure that you're running the proper battery. You probably, again, already have all of this set up for what you were running before. Next up, we're going to go to save. And if you selected a different motor, it would tell you to do a motor encoder calibration, which is what you want to do. In this case, we haven't selected one, but we're going to go do it anyway by going into controller calibration, scrolling down, and setting up encoder. So, like I said, make sure this is on a stand because your motor will spin. Your wheel will spin. Okay, successfully calibrated. This is where your fuel weakening percentage is. Now on this motor, we were saying we were running 100%. That is true. It was just at 40 for something else we were testing. So that's at 100, and then you're pretty much good to go. You can go into your modes and levels, and you can turn these up for whatever's safe for what your battery is capable of running, and your motor is gonna be pretty freaking capable. Hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next video. See ya!